The certified letter showed up on a Tuesday morning like bad weather quiet. On the outside, trouble folded up inside. I opened it with a coffee in one hand, and by the time I got to the second paragraph, I was standing there in my kitchen, shaking so hard I nearly spilled the whole mug. Some stranger calling itself the Cedar Brook Homeowners Association was demanding $200 in unpaid dues and threatening to put a lien on my house if I didn't pay up. Now let me tell you why that hit me like a punch to the throat. I had lived in that house for 11 years, and in all that time I had never signed one HOA document, never attended one HOA meeting, never agreed to one rule, one fee, one scrap of authority from anybody calling themselves Cedar Brook. Anything. My mortgage was paid off. That house was mine, free and clear. So seeing the words property lien sitting there on that page felt like somebody had walked into my living room and calmly told me they might help themselves to my front door. I remember just standing there in the morning light reading the thing again and again, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something less insane. They didn't. The letter claimed I owed back dues all the way to 2021, $200 at first, which honestly almost made it feel more insulting because that's how people get you, right? They don't always start with a number big enough to make you fight. They start with something just annoying enough that you think maybe it's easier to pay and move on. But something in me wouldn't let it go. That afternoon, I pulled every closing document I had ever signed when we bought the house, the deed, the title policy, the closing disclosure, the survey, all of it. I spread everything across the kitchen table so wide it looked like I was building a paper fort. My husband Daniel came home and found me sitting there with reading glasses halfway down my nose, muttering to myself like a woman trying to solve a murder with county stationery. And the more we looked, the stranger it got. There was nothing, not one mention of Cedar Brook HOA, not one recorded restriction, not one covenant, not one membership agreement, not one line saying our lot was subject to HOA rules. Nothing. It was like being accused of breaking rules in a club you never joined. So I called the management office. Big mistake. The property manager, Gerald Puit, a man with the exact personality you'd expect from someone who enjoys threatening retirees with legal paperwork, came on the line sounding bored before I even finished my first sentence. I told him there had to be some kind of error, that my property had never been in any HOA as far as I knew, and he gave me that oily little corporate tone people use when they've already decided you're beneath them. He said the assessment had been properly recorded. He said failure to comply would result in late fees. He said I should take the matter seriously. By the end of that one call, my supposed debt had magically jumped from $200 to $475 with administrative charges. Yeah, that happened. I hung up and just stared at the phone. That's when Daniel said, "No, we're not doing this. We're checking the county records tonight." So we did. He pulled up the county parcel database on his laptop, and I still remember the glow of that screen reflecting off the dining room window while the house got darker around us. We searched our lot number, then the subdivision plat, then the HOA boundary map filed years earlier. And when we put those records side by side, the whole thing cracked open. Our property lot 14 Block 7 wasn't inside the Cedar Brook subdivision boundary. Not barely inside, not maybe inside, not there's room for interpretation inside. Outside, completely outside. Daniel printed everything and we laid the maps next to each other on the table. I remember tracing the lines with my finger over and over like maybe I'd missed something the first 10 times. I hadn't. The line was clear. Their authority stopped short of our parcel, which meant this wasn't a simple billing mistake. This was an HOA trying to collect money and threaten legal action on a home it had no legal control over. That was the moment the fear started turning into anger. Still, fear doesn't leave all at once. It settles in your body. Over the next few days, the letters kept coming. Another notice, then another, each one uglier than the last, each one more aggressive. The amount climbed to $850, then higher. Every page had that same cold little rhythm: pay now or else. Pay now or we escalate. Pay now or we file. I stopped sleeping. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering if some fake claim could actually create a real nightmare. I'd feel this pressure building behind my eyes, this tightness in my chest. At my annual checkup, my doctor looked at my blood pressure and asked if something stressful had been going on. I actually laughed because how do you answer that politely? Oh, nothing major. Just a bunch of overconfident clipboard tyrants trying to invent legal authority over my house. Then their lawyer got involved. 5 pages of legal language, dense and smug, full of phrases clearly meant to scare the life out of ordinary people. Enforcement authority, deed restrictions, declaratory relief, civil action. By then, the demand had grown to $1,200, and something in me just snapped into place. Not wild, not dramatic, just clear. I wasn't paying them a dime. Not one. Because once people figure out you'll pay to make them go away, they never go away. They just come back with a bigger number. That's when I called Patricia Vance. Now, Patricia looked like somebody who had spent 18 years professionally ruining the day of people who thought they were smarter than the law. Calm voice, sharp eyes, not one wasted word. I sent her every document we had, and within 24 hours, she told me exactly what I'd been hoping and terrified to hear. Margaret, she said, your property has never been subject to this HOA. No recorded CC&RS, no valid deed restriction, no jurisdiction. What they're doing is not just wrong, it's dangerous. That woman was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't crazy. She ordered a full title search, not the quick kind, the deep kind. A full chain of title exam going all the way back to the original plat in 1987. When the report came back, it was 42 pages of absolute demolition. Every deed, every easement, every lien, every transfer affecting the property was listed, and Cedarbrook HOA appeared nowhere. Not once. Not in one recorded instrument. Not in one legal entry. It was like they'd built an entire campaign of intimidation on smoke. Patricia sent them a formal response with certified copies of the boundary plat title findings, parcel records, all of it. She demanded they retract the notices, withdraw any lien threat, and acknowledge in writing that my home was outside their authority. They ignored her. Actually, no, that's too polite. They escalated. Instead of backing down, Gerald sent the account to collections as if confidence could substitute for law. Now the total was $1,750 with interest. That was when Patricia filed a complaint with the state HOA regulatory board and started laying the groundwork for a lawsuit. And once that happened, the whole thing began to shift. Because here's the twist none of us saw coming. This wasn't just about me. During discovery, Patricia uncovered internal HOA emails showing that 2 board members had raised concerns about my property boundary more than a year earlier. They knew there was a question. Gerald overruled them and pushed forward anyway. Then the financial records turned up something even worse. 3 other households outside the subdivision had gotten the same treatment. 3. And unlike me, some of them had actually paid. That changed everything. What started as one woman fighting a bogus dues notice suddenly looked a whole lot more like a pattern. Maybe even a racket dressed up in neighborhood landscaping and meeting minutes. The HOA hired outside counsel. Their insurer got involved. The management company started sweating. An email Patricia later showed me described the situation as a significant due process liability risk, which is lawyer language for, oh wow, we may have stepped in something expensive. Meanwhile, my doctor documented the stress this whole mess had caused. Follow-up visits, elevated blood pressure, anxiety symptoms, the whole ugly physical toll of living under a threat that should never have existed in the first place. Patricia added medical damages to the file. Then came the emergency HOA meeting. More than 40 homeowners showed up. Some of them had no idea this was happening. Some were furious. And some, my personal favorites, had the stunned expression of people realizing the folks they trusted to manage flower beds and mailbox paint colors had accidentally wandered into extortion territory. 3 board members announced they wouldn't seek re-election. Gerald's name started coming up in sentences with words like due diligence and liability exposure. And what exactly were you thinking? The court denied the HOA's motion to dismiss. That was a beautiful day. Their attorney tried the whole good faith argument that they'd acted based on internal records, honest mistake, no bad intent. Patricia answered with the original plat, the title report, the county parcel records, and Gerald's own email authorizing enforcement without verifying the boundary first. The judge looked at all that and basically said, no, this case is going forward. Then the court issued preliminary injunctive relief. In plain English, they were ordered to stop. No more enforcement against my property. No more harassment. No more action against the other 3 non-member homes either. They were also ordered to file a corrected boundary plat with the county. Watching that happen felt like finally hearing a bully get told in public to sit down and shut up. Not long after that, Gerald Puit was terminated. The man who had dismissed me over a $200 demand. The man who treated my home like a line item and my fear like leverage lost his job because he couldn't be bothered to verify whether the HOA even had authority in the first place. And I'd love to tell you I reacted with saintly restraint, but honestly, I smiled. A long, slow kitchen table smile. Then came mediation. Their first offer was $3,500, enough to cover some medical costs and attorney's fees, like this whole thing had just been an unfortunate misunderstanding. Patricia rejected it so fast, I think the air moved. She laid out the title report, the internal emails, the audit, the evidence of the other households, the medical records, the liability gaps in their insurance coverage. She didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. Facts are loud when they're stacked in the right order. The final demand was $47,500. That included my damages, attorney's fees, compensation tied to the other affected households, and punitive exposure based on deliberate escalation after they'd been warned. The board asked for 48 hours. They accepted the full amount, $47,500. The settlement required written apologies to all 4 households, a corrected plat filed with the county, an independent audit of past assessments, and a permanent legal acknowledgement that my property was not and had never been part of the HOA. Just like that, the threat that started with a $200 lie ended with them paying tens of thousands to clean up their own mess. I came home that afternoon and sat at the same kitchen table where this whole thing began. Same wood grain, same chair, same spot where I'd spread out my papers the day that first letter arrived. Only this time the house felt still in a different way, not frightened, not tense, just settled. The lien had never been filed, the money had never been paid, and the people who tried to bluff me out of my rights had been forced on paper, in court, and in public to admit they never had those rights to begin with. And that's the thing I keep thinking about. Power scares people mostly when it looks official. A logo at the top of a letter, legal words in bold print, deadlines, threats, fees. Enough people see that and fold, not because they're weak, but because they've got jobs and kids and doctor appointments and lives to live. They don't have the time or energy to go to war over something that should have been lawful in the first place. And people like Gerald count on that. They count on exhaustion. They count on fear. They count on the idea that regular people will confuse paperwork with truth. But paperwork isn't truth. And sometimes the most dangerous people in a neighborhood aren't the loud ones. They're the ones hiding behind procedure, hoping nobody checks the map. So now I'll ask you, what I asked myself that first awful week: if somebody in power came after your home with confidence, with letterhead, with threats, would you pay just to make it stop, or would you make them prove they had the right? Tell me where you draw the line between a mistake and abuse, between justice and revenge. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA board or anybody drunk on a little borrowed authority, share your story too. I really want to hear it.